Alien woman hated humans until she fell in love with a man. Lyra had always hated humans. She had spent more than half her life studying them, watching their movements across the stars, learning about their wars, their mistakes, their recklessness. Every encounter she had with a human had confirmed what she already knew. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and far too emotional for their own good. The Jarillian Council had warned her about them, and she had listened carefully. But now, stationed on a quiet outpost near the edge of the Sol system, she had the perfect chance to observe them without interference. She had hoped for another example of their folly. The observation deck of the outpost stretched in a dome of clear, reinforced crystal. Stars twinkled far beyond, and the blue glow of distant planets reflected softly on the polished floor. Lyra stood there, her multifaceted eyes scanning her instruments. Ships moved like tiny fireflies in the distance, and the occasional human research vessel appeared on her sensors. None had impressed her so far. They moved slowly, without strategy, often ignoring the dangers that the void held. Lyra sighed. Another reckless species thinking they could explore space without consequences. Her attention shifted to a small vessel entering her sector. It was not unusual for humans to wander near Jarillian space, but something about this one was different. Its movement was careful, calculated, almost deliberate. Lyra frowned, tapping a control panel. The vessel was piloted by a human named Daniel, according to his broadcast identification. He was alone, unlike the larger, more chaotic crews she had observed before. Lyra studied him quietly as he maneuvered through a dense asteroid belt. Each calculation, each adjustment of his ship seemed precise, almost graceful. She leaned closer to the observation panel, her curiosity growing despite herself. She had expected hesitation, mistakes, even panic, but Daniel handled everything with calm, measured efficiency. Lyra's jaw tightened. It was not what she wanted to see. A sudden alert blinked across her display. A solar flare, massive and unpredictable, was heading straight for Daniel's vessel. The computer warned that it would hit in minutes, and there was little time to act. Lyra froze. Part of her wanted to let the human fail, to see him prove that humans were careless and weak. Another part of her, one she rarely acknowledged, felt a strange tug of concern. If she didn't act, he would die. The thought made her chest tighten, though she tried to ignore it. Finally, she made her decision. She engaged the outpost's remote repair drones, sending them to stabilize Daniel's vessel from a distance. She did it quietly, making sure her actions would remain untraceable to the human. Watching the small drones linked to his ship, she felt a strange satisfaction as his instruments stabilized. He had no idea he was being saved, and that was just the way she wanted it. Even as she watched him continue to work, Lyra could not stop studying him. Daniel moved through the cabin of his ship with confidence, his hands precise, his eyes focused. He spoke quietly to himself, adjusting controls and recalculating trajectories, but his tone was calm, almost cheerful. Lyra frowned, unsure how to interpret it. She had expected panic, fear, maybe anger. None of those things were there. When the solar flare passed, Daniel's ship was intact. He let out a small, relieved sigh and leaned back in his chair. Lyra watched him, and for the first time she felt a flicker of admiration. It was dangerous to feel this way. Jarillians were taught that humans were inferior, that emotions could cloud judgment. Yet, Daniel's calm and careful actions had saved himself, and maybe, if she had not intervened, he would have failed. Lyra's sensors indicated that he was scanning the outpost, though he could not see her. His eyes were sharp, curious, and intelligent. He was not like the humans she had seen before. He asked questions of his ship, of himself, and sometimes he smiled when something worked the way he expected. Lyra frowned again. Smiling was not something she associated with a capable human. Humans were weak because they let emotions guide them. Yet this human's emotions seemed to give him clarity instead of clouding his judgment. For hours, she watched him work. He repaired minor systems, recalculated his course, and even paused occasionally to note things in a small digital pad. Lyra felt her impatience fading. Instead of annoyance at his species, she felt curiosity, dangerous curiosity. She could not help herself. She wanted to know how one human could behave so differently from all the others. Night fell over the observation deck, or what counted as night in the artificial environment of the outpost. Lyra remained at her post, unable to tear herself away. She realized reluctantly that she had been judging humans too harshly. Not all of them were reckless. Not all of them were incapable. Daniel had shown her that even within a species she considered inferior, there were individuals capable of extraordinary things. The next morning, Daniel's ship approached the outpost again. Lyra's sensors detected his communications as he sent a greeting, polite and cautious, but friendly. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. Gyrillians rarely interacted with humans directly, and she had been trained to maintain distance. Yet a part of her wanted to speak to him, to see if he would truly live up to the promise she had glimpsed yesterday. She opened a secure channel, her voice modulated to sound neutral. "This is Lyra of the Gyrillian Observation Station. Your vessel is approaching restricted space. State your intentions." Daniel's reply came quickly, calm, and respectful. "I am Daniel, a researcher of human spaceflight. I mean no harm. I request temporary permission to pass through your sector for observation and data collection." Lyra's first instinct was to deny him. Humans were unpredictable, and she could not risk letting one wander through sensitive areas. But as she considered his calm tone, the precision in his movements, and the careful way he had avoided danger yesterday, she felt something new: trust. Cautious, careful trust, but trust nonetheless. "Permission granted," she said finally. "You may proceed under supervision. Any deviation from your stated course will be met with immediate response." Daniel acknowledged her with a small, polite smile that she could almost sense through the audio link. It was brief, professional, but it carried warmth. Lyra frowned. Why did warmth feel so disarming? She had never encountered a human whose presence made her feel anything but irritation or indifference. As Daniel's ship passed through her sector, he maintained perfect adherence to instructions. Lyra observed him silently, and for the first time she found herself thinking about humans in a new way. They were messy, yes. They were emotional, yes. But they were also capable of courage, intelligence, and creativity beyond what she had imagined. By the time Daniel's ship disappeared into the distance, Lyra felt a strange emptiness. She had watched him leave, but she wanted to see him again. She wanted to study him further, not as a subject to be monitored, but as something else. She did not yet understand what that meant. Lyra returned to her quarters, her mind restless. She replayed every moment she had observed, every decision Daniel had made, every small smile and careful gesture. She realized with surprise that she was beginning to admire him. That admiration quickly turned into a new feeling she had never acknowledged: fascination. A dangerous fascination, because it was starting to make her question everything she had believed about humans. For years, Lyra had believed humans were chaotic, destructive, and incapable of meaningful thought beyond their emotions. Now, she was forced to admit that at least one human had proven her wrong. One human had navigated danger with intelligence, courage, and grace. And one human had made her feel emotions she had spent a lifetime suppressing. Lyra went to bed that night with her thoughts racing. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just curiosity, nothing more. Yet even as she closed her eyes, she could picture Daniel at the controls of his ship, calm, focused, alive. She felt a strange warmth in her chest. For the first time, she wondered if humans were not just worthy of observation, but worthy of something more. By the end of that first week, Lyra had made a decision she had never thought possible. She would continue to monitor Daniel, not out of duty but out of interest. She would observe him, study him, and perhaps understand what made him different. Perhaps, she thought with an unfamiliar thrill, she would even allow herself to learn from him. And so, the seeds of change were planted. The alien who had hated humans now found herself drawn to one. The future was uncertain, full of risks and possibilities, but Lyra felt alive in a way she had never known. She had saved a human once, almost by accident, and in doing so, she had saved herself from a life of prejudice and closed-mindedness. For the first time in her life, Lyra looked forward to tomorrow, eager to see what the human named Daniel would do next, and to see what she might learn about herself along the way. Lyra could not stop thinking about Daniel. Even after days of watching him from a distance, she felt the strange pull of curiosity, a fascination she had never experienced before. His presence lingered in her mind like a melody that refused to fade, a constant reminder that her long-held beliefs about humans might be wrong. She had told herself it was just curiosity, nothing more, but the warmth in her chest told her otherwise. Her observation post had always been quiet, a place where she could monitor without distraction. Yet now, every blip on her sensors made her heart race a little faster. Daniel's small research vessel moved methodically through space, collecting data on nearby asteroid fields and cosmic radiation. He spoke quietly to himself at times, and Lyra found herself straining to catch fragments of his words, fascinated by the way he solved problems with calm logic and patience. Today, Daniel's mission was more ambitious. He planned to chart a particularly unstable region of the Sol system, one where magnetic storms frequently damaged unprepared ships. It was dangerous work, and Lyra should have been ready to observe from a safe distance. Instead, she felt an urge to intervene, not because she doubted him, but because she wanted to see how he would react under pressure. As the storm approached, Daniel's ship shook violently, alarms ringing in the cabin. Lyra's sensors detected every movement he made. His hands flew over the controls, making adjustments faster than any human she had seen before. Yet, unlike other humans, he did not panic. His face was set in a calm determination, his eyes sharp and focused. Lyra felt something stir inside her, a mixture of admiration and disbelief. How could a human remain so composed in the face of imminent danger? The storm hit harder than expected. Daniel's ship was buffeted by magnetic waves, systems flashing red with errors. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to intervene immediately, but she resisted, forcing herself to watch. She could see every small calculation he made, every maneuver he executed to stabilize the vessel. And then, slowly, the ship steadied. Daniel exhaled, a small, almost invisible sigh of relief, and Lyra realized that he had survived without her help. A surge of respect washed over her. This was what she had never understood about humans. They were not all reckless. They were capable of courage, creativity, and ingenuity that even Gyrillians could admire. Lyra had thought herself immune to such emotions, but now she felt them clearly. For the first time, she questioned not just Daniel, but her own assumptions about an entire species. When the storm passed, Daniel's ship resumed its course. Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of pride. He had proven that humans could rise to challenges she had assumed were impossible for them. She wanted to speak to him, to tell him she had seen his skill and admired it, but she held back. Gyrillians rarely complimented humans directly, and doing so could draw unwanted attention. Yet, the thought lingered in her mind, unshakable. Over the next few days, Lyra observed him closely. Daniel worked tirelessly, analyzing data, making precise adjustments to his equipment, and documenting his findings. He seemed to find joy in discovery, a simple happiness that Lyra had never experienced herself. She found herself smiling quietly at his small victories, a strange and unfamiliar feeling that she did not fully understand. One evening, Daniel's ship made an unexpected detour, approaching the outpost. Lyra's sensors lit up with alerts. Humans rarely acted with such caution, but Daniel's movements were deliberate, almost careful, as if he understood the risks. Lyra felt a flicker of anticipation. She could not deny that she wanted to see him again, not as a subject of study, but as something more personal, though she did not yet know what that was. "Lyra, can you hear me?" Daniel's voice came over the communication channel, calm and polite, but with a hint of curiosity. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. "State your purpose." "I wanted to thank you," he said. I don't know who you are, but someone or something helped stabilize my systems during the storm. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt a presence guiding me. If it was you, I appreciate it." Lyra hesitated. Humans were unpredictable when it came to emotions, and admitting her involvement could be dangerous. Yet she felt a strange urge to respond honestly. "It was unintentional," she said finally. "I did not intend to interfere directly. I only ensured your ship would not be destroyed." There was a pause on the line. Then Daniel chuckled softly, a sound so warm and genuine that Lyra felt a shiver run through her. "Well, I suppose that counts as help," he said. "Thank you." Lyra did not reply immediately. The human's calm gratitude unsettled her, and she was not used to being acknowledged in such a personal way. Humans typically overreacted, demanded attention, or panicked. Daniel's response was simple, honest, and kind. She felt an unexpected bond forming, fragile but undeniable. In the following days, Daniel began to communicate more often. He asked questions about the outpost, about the region of space they both observed, and even about Lyra herself, though she kept her answers neutral. Still, his curiosity was persistent, polite, and respectful. Lyra found herself enjoying these exchanges more than she wanted to admit. He made her feel, connected, in a way she had never felt with her own species. Lyra's colleagues noticed a change in her demeanor. She spent more time at the observation deck, more time watching Daniel's movements, and less time focusing on other human activities in the sector. They did not question her, but subtle remarks hinted at concern. Lyra ignored them. She had never allowed herself distractions, but now she was captivated, drawn to the human in a way that frightened her. One afternoon, Daniel's ship encountered a minor system malfunction. It was nothing he could not handle, but the way he approached the problem fascinated Lyra. He moved calmly, diagnosing the issue with logic and precision, and then solved it with an elegant simplicity. Lyra could not help but admire his skill, and for the first time she felt something that could only be described as pride. As he worked, Lyra imagined herself beside him, helping, guiding, learning. The thought made her heart beat faster, a sensation she barely understood. Humans were not supposed to inspire such feelings in Gyrillians. Yet Daniel had done what no human or alien had ever done before. He had touched her deeply without even knowing it. Lyra's curiosity soon turned to obsession. She analyzed every movement he made, every word he spoke, every small decision he took. She found herself laughing quietly at his small jokes, shaking her head at his stubborn optimism, and marveling at his ability to stay calm under pressure. Daniel was unlike any human she had encountered, and perhaps unlike any being she had ever known. One night, the outpost experienced a minor power fluctuation. Lyra had prepared for emergencies countless times, but now, her thoughts immediately turned to Daniel. She checked his ship's status and found that he was handling the situation expertly. A strange relief washed over her. She realized that she cared about his safety, a thought that made her both proud and uneasy. Lyra could not deny it anymore. She admired him, perhaps even more than that. He was intelligent, courageous, and kind. He was everything she had thought humans could never be, and in a way she did not yet understand, he made her feel alive, curious, and hopeful. The realization frightened her. Gyrillians were trained to suppress emotions that could cloud judgment, and yet here she was, captivated by a human. She knew she had to remain cautious, to observe without interference, but every time Daniel spoke or acted, she found it harder to maintain distance. Then one evening, Daniel's ship made a small error in navigation, drifting dangerously close to a debris field. Lyra acted immediately, sending a subtle signal to guide him safely through. He adjusted his course seamlessly, unaware of her intervention. But Lyra felt a thrill at having helped, a satisfaction that was both professional and deeply personal. She realized that she wanted to protect him, to guide him, to be near him in some way. For days, Lyra struggled with her feelings. She had never allowed herself attachments outside of duty, yet she found herself thinking about Daniel constantly. She imagined conversations with him, imagined exploring the stars together, imagined learning from his unique perspective on life. Each thought was exhilarating, terrifying, and impossible to ignore. When Daniel's ship finally left the sector for a longer mission, Lyra felt an unexpected emptiness. She had spent weeks observing him, learning from him, and perhaps even falling, though she did not yet call it that. His absence was palpable, a quiet void that left her restless and longing. Lyra returned to her quarters and reflected on everything she had observed. Humans were not simple, reckless creatures as she had believed. They were complex, capable, and inspiring, and Daniel in particular had shown her a side of humanity she had never imagined. He had challenged her assumptions, made her question her prejudices, and awakened emotions she had long suppressed. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt hope. Hope that humans could be allies, that they could teach her, and perhaps that one human could change her world entirely. She did not yet understand what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly. Daniel had become more than a subject to observe. He had become a presence she could not ignore, a spark in her life that promised excitement, discovery, and perhaps something more. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond her observation deck, Lyra allowed herself a rare smile. She would wait for Daniel's return, study him further, and see where this strange connection would lead. The alien who had once hated humans now found herself captivated by one, and for the first time, she was eager to embrace the possibilities of the unknown. Lyra watched the sensors intently as Daniel's ship slowly re-entered her sector. The days without him had been unusually quiet, filled with longing and constant analysis of his previous missions. His absence had left a strange emptiness in her routine, a hole she hadn't realized existed. For weeks, she had observed him from afar, admiring his intelligence, precision, and calm demeanor. Now, for the first time, they would actually meet face to face. The docking bay of the outpost was sleek and functional, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Lyra moved through the corridors with a sense of anticipation she had never felt before. She was trained to be disciplined, to separate emotion from duty, yet Daniel's arrival made her pulse quicken. Her thoughts swirled with questions, curiosity, and a strange mixture of excitement and apprehension. Daniel's ship approached the docking bay with careful precision. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, and measured. Lyra could not help but feel admiration for his piloting skills. Unlike many humans who entered the sector recklessly, Daniel respected protocols and procedures. There was a quiet dignity in the way he navigated the docking sequence, a sense of confidence that came not from arrogance, but from experience and understanding. As the airlock opened, Lyra stepped forward. Her Jarillian form was taller and more elegant than Daniel expected, her posture commanding yet graceful. Her eyes, multifaceted and shimmering faintly, studied him closely, taking in his every movement. Daniel paused, impressed but not intimidated. He offered a small, respectful nod in greeting, his own calm demeanor mirroring hers in a curious way. "You must be Daniel," Lyra said, her voice measured, neutral, but carrying a subtle warmth she did not consciously intend. "That's me," he replied with a polite smile. "And you must be Lyra. I've been looking forward to meeting you." The words were simple, but they carried sincerity and respect. Lyra felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. She had anticipated curiosity, perhaps caution, but not warmth. Humans rarely conveyed it so naturally, and it unsettled her in the most fascinating way. "I have observed your work," Lyra said carefully. "Your methods are unusual but effective. You handle challenges with logic and composure. Few humans demonstrate such control." Daniel's eyes brightened slightly. "Thank you. I've always believed that careful observation and planning are key, and sometimes it helps to remain calm even when things go wrong." He paused, then added lightly, "I guess you've noticed that already." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "I have." She studied him for a moment, noticing the quiet determination in his stance, the way he carried himself with both confidence and humility. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but Daniel seemed different. He had a sense of balance, a rare combination of skill, intellect, and patience. They walked together through the docking bay, discussing the region of space he had been surveying. Daniel spoke with passion and curiosity, pointing out asteroid formations, magnetic fluctuations, and radiation patterns. Lyra listened, impressed by his insights and the clarity with which he explained complex ideas. She realized that his fascination with the universe was not just professional, it was personal. He loved discovery not just for achievement but for understanding. For hours, they moved through the outpost, exchanging observations and theories. Lyra found herself relaxing in his presence, her usual caution and formality softening. She had spent so long judging humans that she had forgotten how it felt to be genuinely interested in one. Daniel's presence was invigorating, and she noticed the subtle way her thoughts kept returning to him, to his ideas, to the way he made her feel. During a break, they sat near a window overlooking the stars. Daniel leaned back, gazing at the distant planets, and Lyra noticed the quiet satisfaction in his expression. He was not boastful or arrogant. He simply appreciated the vastness of space and the beauty it held. Lyra found herself drawn to his perspective, seeing the universe through his eyes, and for the first time she felt a kind of shared wonder. "You make it all seem simpler," Lyra said softly, almost to herself. Daniel looked at her, curious. "Simpler?" "Yes," she replied. "Not that it is simple, but your approach, your calm, it makes the chaos seem manageable. You see patterns where others see only confusion." Daniel smiled. "I guess that's just how I think, but I could say the same about you. You analyze, observe, adapt. You notice things most people would miss. You see order in places others see disorder." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. It was not just admiration, but something more, something she did not yet fully understand. Humans were capable of inspiration, she realized, and Daniel was living proof. He had changed her perspective, not with force or argument, but simply by being himself. As the conversation continued, Lyra became aware of the subtle ways they connected. Their thoughts aligned in unexpected ways, their curiosity about the universe overlapping. Daniel asked questions not just about her observations, but about her reasoning, her thought processes, and her experiences. Lyra found herself answering honestly, more openly than she had with any Gyrillian colleague. There was trust forming between them, fragile yet undeniable. Later, they visited the lab section of the outpost. Daniel examined samples from nearby asteroid fields, while Lyra provided input on their composition and potential significance. Their collaboration was seamless. He proposed experiments, she suggested adjustments, and together they discovered new data that neither could have achieved alone. Lyra felt a thrill of accomplishment, not just from the work, but from the shared understanding and mutual respect. As the day drew to a close, Daniel prepared to return to his ship. Lyra walked with him to the airlock, a strange reluctance settling over her. She had enjoyed his company far more than she expected, and the thought of him leaving was unexpectedly heavy. "You've changed my understanding," Lyra said carefully, "of humans, of exploration of what is possible." Daniel tilted his head, curious. "Changed your understanding?" "Yes," she said softly. "I had believed humans were reckless, emotional, incapable of certain thought. But you have proven otherwise. You are exceptional." Daniel's smile widened, and he offered a hand. "And you have shown me that observation and insight can reveal more than data alone. That understanding another perspective, alien or human, can change how we see the universe." Lyra hesitated, then took his hand. The contact was brief, but it sent a ripple through her that she could not ignore. It was simple, human, and yet profoundly meaningful. She had never experienced anything like it before. As Daniel entered his ship and prepared for departure, he turned back to her. "I hope this is not the last time we meet," he said. Lyra felt a rare smile tug at her lips. "It will not be," she replied. "There is much more to observe, and perhaps much more to learn." When his ship lifted off, Lyra returned to the observation deck, her thoughts racing. She had anticipated curiosity, perhaps respect, but not fascination, not admiration, and certainly not the strange longing that filled her now. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but Daniel was more than that. He was inspiring, challenging, and somehow necessary. Over the next few days, Lyra found herself replaying their conversations and interactions in her mind. She studied his actions, his decisions, and the subtle ways he approached problems. Every time she thought about him, she felt a strange warmth, a sense of connection that was entirely new. She realized she was no longer just observing him, she was learning from him, growing because of him. Lyra also noticed changes in her own perspective. The more she spent time with Daniel, even indirectly, the more she questioned her assumptions about humans in general. They were not a single, predictable species. They were individuals, capable of brilliance, courage, and ingenuity. Daniel was a living testament to that truth, and Lyra found herself inspired to see the best in others, not just the flaws. One evening, she observed Daniel as he worked late in his ship. He was adjusting instruments with careful precision, muttering calculations under his breath. Lyra felt a deep admiration for his dedication, but also a strange tenderness. She wished she could communicate more freely with him, share ideas without restraint, and perhaps even spend more time together. The thought of it made her pulse quicken and her chest warm. Lyra understood now that she was drawn to him, not just for his skills, but for who he was as a person. Daniel had qualities she had long admired from afar but never expected to see in a human: patience, intelligence, courage, and kindness. He challenged her, inspired her, and made her feel emotions she had spent a lifetime suppressing. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to hope. Hope that humans could be more than she had believed, and that one human in particular could change her life in ways she never imagined. Daniel had become more than a subject to observe. He had become a presence she could not ignore, a spark in her life that promised discovery, growth, and perhaps something deeper. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond her observation deck, Lyra made a quiet promise to herself. She would continue to learn from him, understand him, and explore the connection that was forming between them. She did not yet know where it would lead, but for the first time, she felt excitement and anticipation rather than skepticism or contempt. Lyra, who had once hated humans, now found herself captivated by one. And in the quiet hum of the outpost, she realized that the universe had just become infinitely more interesting. The days after Daniel's visit were quiet. but they were no longer empty for Lyra. His presence lingered in her thoughts, and every movement she observed in his ship, every small detail about how he approached his work, seemed more important than ever. She found herself replaying their conversations in her mind, noting how he explained complex concepts so clearly, how he remained calm under pressure, and how his quiet humor could lighten even the tensest moments. Lyra had never admitted it to herself, but she missed him more than she had expected. One morning, Lyra's sensors picked up an unusual energy spike in the nearby asteroid field that Daniel had been studying. It was not dangerous yet, but it had the potential to grow into something catastrophic if ignored. She frowned at the readings, her mind racing. She considered sending an alert to the Jarillian fleet, but the last thing she wanted was to involve them and risk interfering with Daniel's independent work. Instead, she decided to contact him directly. "Daniel," Lyra said through the communication channel, her voice steady but carrying an edge of urgency. "There is a fluctuation in the asteroid field you were monitoring. It could become unstable within the next few hours. You should take precautions." Daniel's calm voice replied immediately, tinged with concern but not panic. "I see it. Thank you for the warning. I'll reroute my calculations and adjust the stabilizers. Can you maintain observation with me?" Lyra hesitated. Working closely with a human in a potentially dangerous situation was not standard protocol for a Jarillian officer, but she wanted to be near him to see his process firsthand and perhaps even contribute in some way. "I will," she said. "Stay focused." "We will handle this together." Daniel's approval was subtle but visible in his tone. "Good, let's do it." As he navigated toward the asteroid field, Lyra observed him closely. The way he calculated trajectories, predicted movements, and adjusted the ship's stabilizers was extraordinary. He remained calm, even as small pieces of debris shifted unpredictably. Lyra felt a thrill of admiration and pride. She had seen many humans in her time, but none could approach the level of focus and ingenuity that Daniel displayed. A sudden surge of energy erupted from a nearby asteroid, sending fragments spinning toward his ship. Lyra's sensors detected the danger instantly. Daniel acted without hesitation, issuing precise commands and adjusting his instruments to compensate. He remained composed, his face calm, his hands steady. Lyra could not take her eyes off him. Every movement he made, every decision he took, seemed perfectly orchestrated. "Brace for turbulence," Daniel said calmly, his voice almost soothing in its steadiness. Lyra's heart raced, not with fear, but with excitement. She realized she was fully invested in his safety more than she had expected. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but Daniel's skill and composure made her feel secure, even in the midst of danger. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, an emotion she could not name but could not ignore. The asteroid fragments passed without incident, and Daniel's ship remained stable. Lyra allowed herself a small, quiet smile. He had handled the situation flawlessly, and yet he had done it without arrogance, without fear, simply relying on intelligence and calm reasoning. Lyra realized that she was beginning to feel something stronger than admiration. She was beginning to care. Over the next few hours, they worked together to analyze the energy fluctuation and stabilize the surrounding area. Daniel proposed adjustments to the ship systems, while Lyra suggested strategies to monitor the field more effectively. Their collaboration was seamless, each respecting the other's expertise. Lyra was amazed at how natural it felt to work alongside him, how easily they understood each other despite being from different species. As the immediate danger passed, Daniel let out a quiet sigh of relief. "We did it," he said, a small smile on his face. "That could have gone much worse." Lyra allowed herself a rare laugh. "Indeed, your skill was impressive, perhaps even beyond what I expected." Daniel's smile widened, and for a moment there was a silent understanding between them. They had faced a challenge together, and both had come through unscathed. Lyra realized that this shared experience had deepened her connection to him. She had never thought it possible to feel this way about a human, yet here she was, captivated by his courage, intelligence, and composure. In the following days, Lyra found herself seeking more opportunities to interact with Daniel. She requested access to data he was collecting, offering insights and guidance where she could. Daniel welcomed her input, appreciating her expertise and perspective. Together, they discovered new patterns in the asteroid field, uncovering phenomena that neither could have identified alone. During one particularly long session, Daniel paused to look at Lyra. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't expect to find someone who understands my approach so well. Most humans don't see things the way you do, and yet here you are, explaining ideas I didn't even know needed explaining." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest she could no longer deny. I have spent a long time observing humans," she admitted, "but your approach is different. It challenges me, and yet it feels natural." Daniel's eyes held hers, calm and sincere. "I think we make a good team. I've learned a lot from you already." Lyra's chest tightened. The words were simple, but they carried profound meaning. For the first time, she felt the possibility of connection, not just professional but personal. Daniel had broken through the walls she had built around herself, walls of prejudice and caution. She realized that she trusted him, relied on him, and perhaps even liked him. Their collaboration continued to deepen. Daniel shared stories of human exploration, of the mistakes and successes that had shaped their understanding of space. Lyra listened intently, fascinated by the resilience and ingenuity he described. She found herself laughing at his anecdotes, shaking her head at his occasional stubbornness, and marveling at his ability to remain calm in situations that would terrify others. One evening, as they reviewed data near the observation window, Lyra noticed Daniel staring out at the stars. He seemed lost in thought, his expression peaceful yet contemplative. Lyra felt a strange urge to join him, to share the view, to experience the universe as he did. She stepped closer, and for a moment they simply stood together, gazing at the endless expanse. "You see it differently, don't you?" Daniel said softly. "The stars, the planets, everything. You notice details I might miss, patterns I wouldn't see. And yet I feel like I understand it better with you here." Lyra nodded, her heart beating faster. "I see it differently, but your perspective has shown me possibilities I never considered. It is enlightening." Daniel turned to her, a small smile on his lips. "I'm glad. You make this work more meaningful, more than just data, more than just observation. You make it feel alive." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never expected to hear such words from a human. They were simple, yet they carried sincerity, honesty, and a deep connection that transcended species. For the first time, she felt the possibility of friendship, and perhaps something more. Over the next week, their interactions grew more personal. They discussed theories, shared observations, and even joked quietly with each other. Lyra found herself looking forward to these moments, to the sound of his voice, to the clarity of his thoughts, and to the calm confidence he exuded. She realized that her feelings were no longer just professional admiration. They were personal, emotional, and undeniable. Lyra's colleagues noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. She spent more time at the observation deck, more time engaged with Daniel's work, and less time on standard monitoring tasks. They made quiet remarks, questioning her focus, but Lyra ignored them. Her mind and heart were occupied with something far more important: understanding Daniel, learning from him, and exploring the connection that was growing between them. One night, as they prepared for another joint observation session, Lyra realized how much she had come to rely on him, not just for collaboration, but for companionship. His presence was calming, inspiring, and invigorating all at once. She felt alive in a way she had never experienced before. Daniel, for his part, seemed equally invested. He asked for her insights, valued her perspective, and even sought her approval on certain decisions. Lyra noticed the subtle ways he considered her thoughts, respected her judgment, and appreciated her expertise. It was more than professional courtesy. It was genuine respect, a bond that was forming quietly but firmly. As they concluded their session and prepared to part for the night, Lyra felt a rare hesitation. She wanted to say something, to express the strange, powerful emotions that had been growing within her. Yet she did not know how to articulate them, nor did she have the words to describe feelings that were so new, so foreign. Daniel seemed to sense her thoughts. He looked at her, calm, sincere, and understanding. "You've changed the way I see things too," he said softly. "Not just the work, but everything. I never expected to find someone who makes this feel alive, meaningful." Lyra's heart raced. The words mirrored her own feelings, yet expressed with a clarity and confidence she had yet to achieve. She realized that Daniel had touched her deeply, awakening emotions she had spent a lifetime suppressing. He had challenged her assumptions, inspired her curiosity, and now He had captured her heart in a way she could no longer deny. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck, Lyra allowed herself a rare, quiet smile. She had faced danger, learned from Daniel, and discovered a connection that transcended species. The alien who had once hated humans now found herself captivated by one, inspired by him, and eager to explore not just the universe, but the bond that had begun to form between them. For the first time, Lyra felt a future filled with possibility, adventure, discovery, and perhaps love. And as she watched Daniel's ship disappear into the distance that night, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with him, side by side, and that her life would never be the same again.